Join us and unwind with a good book. Welcome to Relaxing Reads.
Welcome to our book club chat. I'm Anne from the Morning Breeze in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia.
I'm Deb from the Morning Breeze in Halifax.
And I'm Simone from Breeze Afternoons in Vancouver and Edmonton.
And our latest book is Malibu Rising from best-selling author Taylor Jenkins Reid. It tells the story of 4 famous siblings who throw an epic party to celebrate the end of summer in 1983. But over the course of 24 hours, their lives will change forever. By midnight, the party will be completely out of control. By morning, the Riva mansion will have gone up in flames. But before that first spark in the early morning hours before dawn, the alcohol will flow, the music will play, and the loves and secrets that shaped this family's generations will all come rising to the surface. Okay, on that note, let's get to it. Malibu Rising. What a read. I absolutely loved it. Deb, Simone, what did you think of this book?
Yeah, I did too. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I was really into it. I couldn't put it down once I started reading. It was one of those types of books.
Same with me. My friend actually read it, and she was offering me her copy of it. And I said, no, that's the book we're reading in our book club. I have a copy. And I asked her, I said, what did you think? And she kind of went, And I was like, oh, okay. And so I didn't really go in with expectations. I had seen other people post about it. Obviously, it's a New York Times bestseller, so I knew it had to be good. So since I think I went in with not such high expectations, I actually quite enjoyed it. And it was better than I thought it was going to be. So it was good.
Yeah, when I first looked at it, I'm like, what do I know about Malibu and surfing and how will I ever get into this read? And instantly I was in, and I was the same as Deb. I could not put this book down. So let's get right to it. What were your first impressions of the siblings, and did that change as the story went on? And Simone, we'll start with you.
My first impression was that they were all just so perfect and so athletic. They describe how beautiful and how sun-kissed their skin is. And, they like to get out on the surf, and they've got contracts with all these magazines and people just after them, especially 3 of the 4 siblings. They just kind of had it all together. And then, as you get into it, you kind of start to understand them on a deeper level, more than just that surface level, which I enjoyed, because I think that's what it was in the beginning. It was kind of like, is this just going to be a bunch of, about a bunch of surfers who live this kind of amazing life? But when you actually got to know a bit about the root of their characters, it was actually quite interesting to kind of get to know what each of them was all about and how different all 4 of them were.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not a surfer. I've never surfed, but they got me wanting to actually get into it. But I did find that, oh my gosh, who are these people in their lives? But they do care a lot for each other, enough to tease, the typical sibling rivalry. And because they all surf, challenging each other when it comes to that common interest, even just keeping the household in order. They all seem to come together fairly well, considering all things, once people get into it and know the story in the background. For me, the one that I thought, she's holding back, there's some kind of a mystery surrounding her. Nina, who of course was the caretaker, the oldest sibling, or the oldest sister, I thought that there was something more to her, that she wasn't letting it all out. And I wasn't quite sure how I felt about her until a little later on.
Yes, I totally echo what you both say. And when I first started this book, I was thinking the main characters may be somewhat superficial, living in Malibu, getting ready for this big party in one of their mansions. But as the story unfolds and you find out about their backstories and realize there's so much more to each of them, especially Nina. And Deb, you were just mentioning Nina. I was so taken with her story. Here she is, this famous supermodel surfing star, married to a tennis star, daughter of a singing superstar, but she's been through so much, and her story shows such depth and compassion. She shoulders the weight of her family and helps basically to raise her siblings. She was my favorite character by far, my favorite of the siblings. But they all had their own struggles and experiences that added to the story as well. There's so many levels to it. I just really, and I found it was easy to follow along with as well. I didn't, even with the switching between characters, I didn't feel lost in it. You know what I mean?
I think that's just it. I mean, this book, by the time you get to the end of it, near the end, there are so many characters introduced, especially at the party. And you're right. You can keep up with what they're doing, and you have a level of interest in, wow, what are they about? What's more of their story?
Yeah.
Right. And
I was just going to say that, despite all their difficulties, it always appeared to be so much bigger and better and more romantic and entertaining, their lifestyles. But then, when they came together and you learned a little bit more, it was as if, oh my gosh, okay, they've got all this going on, but they're really like so many of us as well. And for me, Nina reminds me a lot of a good friend of mine who kind of started the caretaking when she was quite young, and she was able to fall into the role of a parent. And here am I beside her growing up thinking, how do you know how to do all these things when you're still a child yourself?
Right, yes. And as we were saying too, with all the characters, there's also multiple timelines. Again, easy to follow though, and really interesting. The majority is focused on the 4 siblings and their parents. So what storyline did you find the most gripping? Simone, what do you think?
I think it was the story between the 2 brothers and, the situation of him dating the brother's ex-girlfriend. And it's just, that's a big secret to keep. So when he was going through the motions and trying to figure out how he was going to tell his brother, because obviously there's this level of trust there, that one was kind of like, oh, that's a big conversation to have. And how is this going to turn out? Especially as Deb, you mentioned, they were so close-knit. They were so tight with each other, that special sibling bond, having lost their parents and stuff. So that one was very intense, the way that one rolled out.
Definitely was. For me, do you know what? I think it was June and Mick, the parents. And even though as we get to know Mick a little more, I was still hoping for so much more from him and rooting for that true love story and feeling for June all these years. And also the connection early on that she had with her children. And baby Hud, the connection that she created, and she took in this baby. I really felt for her, and I was so hoping that things would turn out a little differently for her. But I was intrigued by their parents.
So was I, Deb. I made a few notes here, and I was like, Mick and June, what a story. And I just like trying to unpack what's going on with Mick and why he could never really commit to being a dad, to being a husband. It seemed like he just never felt that what he had was enough. He kept jumping from woman to woman, marriage to marriage, house to house, and he never really settled. And even in the end, when he meets the kids again and he tries to explain himself, and he does have a backstory, you still wonder, is this for real? Is he going to stay this time? Is he going to stay connected with his kids? But I thought it was really cool that the story is told in a 24-hour time frame, but also the flashbacks that basically look at the last 50 years. And it was so interesting to see how it was all sort of interwoven and how it all kind of came together at the end. I really enjoyed the way that it was laid out. I don't know about you two, but just the way again, as Deb said in the beginning, I could not put this book down. I just found it so cool the way it was written. I've never read anything like it, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's just it. Having that backstory was nice, but you were kind of like, okay, now what's going to happen? Let's get back to the party. What's happening over there or on that timeline?
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
And on that note, what did you think about all the details of the party scenes? Because that was super quick and we were meeting lots of characters. Anything stand out for you? Anything make you go, oh?
Well, I
my
just know
gosh.
when I'm prepping for a party, obviously it's not on that level, but I'm not out surfing twice in one day. I'm just like trying to get my mind around what I'm going to do. And they just seem to have all this free time during the day where they're like, let's hit the surf. All right, let's hit the surf again. And I was like, you guys are hosting a party. Should you not be focused on that? But, they had help. But it was just, it was wild. There were some parts where I was like, this is a bit much. But I've also heard of these LA parties where you are having these trays come out with things to ingest that you maybe shouldn't be having. And so that part of it, I was like, wow, this is obviously unlike any kind of party I've been to. But when it got into, the smashing of plates and swinging
So
on
rude.
chandeliers, I was like, this seems a bit far-fetched. Like, does this really happen and nobody cares? Like, that was a bit much for me.
Yeah, like it was on a university dorm frat boy kind of level with the way they were respecting or disrespecting the home. But I think it was everything we imagine it would be like in those lavish lives from the rich and famous, ripped from the covers of the tabloids. But when they were describing the clothing, the characters, the music, it kind of brought me back. With all the craziness of the night. But not that I've been to a party quite like this, but I've heard of some within our own industry. But this goes back to, I guess it would be around the same time frame. It was such a different time, but kind of wild. And you hear about these things and you hear about them night after night after night after night, attending these soirees, these parties. So it did feel like it was everything that you might have seen in a headline.
Yeah, all I kept thinking about was, could you imagine if this party took place in a time when there were cell phones and social media?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. That's all I could think about. And it's interesting because I was listening to an interview with the author of this book, Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she writes specifically, she says she tries to write in times pre-cell phone, pre-social media, so they can really dive in without having to go down that road with bringing up the cell phones and whatnot. But anyway, that's a sidebar. I just thought the same thing. Wild party. And when, as you say, when things got really out of hand, I really like Nina's friend that sort of stepped in and said, enough is enough, and called the cops. Although I was really irritated when the cop wouldn't listen to her and wouldn't go in through the house and clean house at that point, because it was just way out of control and they were wrecking the place and everything. And Nina was nowhere to be found. And I just couldn't imagine having all those people in my house and just going for a walk.
And the other thing that got me was people showing up so late. I don't know if this is me being old, but even Mick leaving his house at midnight to go to a party. I was like, midnight? I'm in bed, like long passed out by the time, and then they're like 2 a.m. So-and-so shows up at the party. And I was like, what?
Right.
Why are these people showing up in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. And you had mentioned, Simone, about how are they not getting ready for this party? I'm thinking to myself, how are they not having a nap before this party? Oh my goodness. Anyway, I would not be able to handle a party like that, but it was very interesting to read about, that's for sure.
Yeah,
so
it certainly was.
I made reference to Nina going for a walk with and going to meet up with her family, and of course Mick was there too at this point. And that takes us to the end of the book, when there's a push for Nina to go to Portugal and leave everything behind, including finally selling the family restaurant. Do you think it was the right move? And we'll start with you, Deb, on this one.
I do, absolutely. I think it was the right move for her. I was really surprised that she made the decision. She was finally able to do something for herself without any hesitation. That was, I think, such a big surprise for me. But I'm happy that she did it, because she had, for so many years, been living for so many others, and she couldn't think about herself. She should have been able to take a moment, but she couldn't in her mind. She had to take care of the family, her siblings, and everything that was happening around her. There was never any time for herself and what that might mean.
And Simone?
I don't know about this. I feel like she's going to go and she's going to be there for a while and she's finally going to get the space and that time for herself, unwind. And then I think she's going to think about this new baby that's on the way and other things that her siblings are doing. And she's going to have a pull to come back. And I don't know if she'll be there a long time. And that's why I feel like there could be a follow-up to this where we see her go and lead her life in Portugal. She falls in love, kind of has her story, but realizes she wants to be closer to her siblings, and where Mick can redeem himself because he hasn't until this point is maybe he shows up as a grandfather and he finally gets it right. So that's what I would root for to happen in this whole scenario.
I hope
Didn't
so.
you love when she just gave it to him at the end, though? Like when she really let it all out? Like he just was like, yes.
I felt bad, though, because, you think of like, older generations and sometimes, they did the best they could and they didn't have the right tools. Like, I mean, we all can make mistakes and some people learn from them and some people just won't. And so when I saw that you want to root for him and hope he changes, but he doesn't, it's just like he's just one of those people that is unfortunately not going to change, and that's who he is. So you don't put a lot of stock in it, but you just kind of say, okay, so we know what our relationship with him is going to be. We can't expect more. So we will give as much as he gives. And there we go.
I was thinking about like the drama that he has created within every relationship he has had over the years, from one woman to another. I think that maybe for him, it goes back to his childhood and not knowing what true love was from his own parents. He didn't have that. So because he didn't have that, he didn't have that connection. So he had to keep moving from one relationship, whether it was a friendship or a love affair. That's just the way that he's been able to kind of perhaps put things away from the past or try to erase it because he just doesn't know any better. But I'm hoping, Simone, that you're right and there's another chapter that we can get into and see him as a wonderful grandfather.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I just think, though, like with Nina, she kept taking all this stuff that was thrown at her and she just go on with it and get stuff done. Like she just never really complained and just did what had to be done because it had to be done. But it just felt like you could feel the weight of it. Like, I'll tell you, one of my favorite parts is when she finally she's just done with everything and she goes and grabs a plate of cheese. I'm like, finally, eat the cheese. Eat it.
Eat it all.
Because you could tell when she was making the sandwiches for the siblings or whatever, she'd always just have tomato on hers. And she always just sort of, top of mind for her was, to have a certain diet and live a certain life so she could make the money and take care of everyone. Like it was never about her. It was always about everyone else. So that in that moment when she let Mick have it, I just felt like it was finally, she was getting it off of her chest. And there was another part with Nina. She was so my favorite character in this book. I loved all the characters, but Nina especially. And if you could just indulge me here for a moment, because it is a bit of a lengthy part of the book here, but I think it really sort of brings it all together, where she's at and where they're all at as a family. So Nina suddenly had a picture in her head. It was as if June had given her a box, as if every parent gives their children a box full of things they carried. June had given her children this box packed to the brim with her own experiences, her own treasures and heartbreaks, her own guilts and pleasures, triumphs and losses, values and biases, duties and sorrows. And Nina had been carrying around this box her whole life, feeling the full weight of it. But it was not. Nina saw just then her job to carry the full box. And it goes on to say her job was to sort through the box, to decide what to keep and to put the rest down. She had to choose what of the things she inherited from the people who came before her she wanted to bring forward, and what of the past she wanted to leave behind. I just thought that was such a, it really kind of encompassed what the story was about.
Mm-hmm.
And
the box was pretty heavy, wasn't it? With
right?
all the issues that came along with it.
Yeah.
And you think about, there was alcoholism, addictions that were part of this story as well. And Nina herself with her own body image, talking about, the food, finally she's able to indulge a little. But a lot of heaviness within the family.
Yeah, and I think that while perhaps she won't stay in Portugal forever, I was happy to see that she just had decided to go and just do her own thing for a little bit, just because she'd been doing everything for everyone else for so long.
One thing I was going to say was, I think it was as if it was an added character, the family restaurant and the whole backdrop with it. I was, happy for Nina that the restaurant was sold, but a little saddened as well, because I thought that was such a part of the family. I know it was difficult to hold on to, and there was so much work involved in it, but it seemed like it was, I don't know, there was something about it that I felt like, oh my gosh, it's like losing a part of your family.
Yeah, and losing the restaurant, losing the house. It was just a lot of, it was a full closing on those chapters. But you're right. A part of you feels like it's a big chapter to close, that restaurant.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And I guess maybe the theme with the fire, right? There was so much fire within so many aspects of each one of them, each character, each role in the family.
Yeah, but rising from the ashes, right? That's what I got from it at the end. And the title of the book as well, Malibu Rising, the restaurant being a character, Malibu being a character. I don't know about you two, but I totally want to go to Malibu at some point. Like, it sounds beautiful and amazing.
Yeah, it does.
Well, as Deb said, I've never done surfing. This made me want to learn to surf. And then it was just every time they talked about driving down the Pacific Coast Highway, I was like, I want to drive that in like a convertible with the sunshine on me, looking at the ocean.
Exactly. You know what we'll do? We'll get a convertible. We'll buy some surfboards, or at least start with a rental, hop in the car, drive down the coast, and then open a cafe and hang out in Malibu.
Yes,
it's a
good
deal.
Plan.
Maybe.
Love it. Yeah, no, I think this was one of my faves. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. So I look forward to the next part of the story, as you say. Maybe there'll be a sequel.
And
coming in the future.
Deb filled me in while we were talking the other day that this show is going to be picked up to become a series. Yay. That's exciting.
Yes.
Love
That's
it.
exciting, because not only will we get to relive, the story here, but I think that Simone will lead to your next chapter that you've already, started writing for her.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
I can't wait to see who they cast.
I know. Well, it was a great read, ladies, and I'm glad we had a lot of good insight on this one as well. And I hope the story continues at some point. And thank you again for being here and listening through our discussion. And we'll be back again with you soon after we review another book.
Thank you for kicking back and relaxing with us. We hope you'll join us again on Relaxing Reads.